everyone, and welcome back to Articulating with David Barnett. My name is Sharon Loker, and with me today is the man we all know and adore, the legend himself, Mr. David Barnett. Yay!
Thank you.
And today we also welcome local artist Cathryn Ruvalcaba. Thank you so much for joining us, Cathryn.
Thank you for having me, and I get a chance to talk about my favorite things, animals and art.
Yes, who doesn't love animals and art? I know I do. Anyways, to kick things off, I thought we would just start with, if you could just share a little bit of your background, how you became an artist.
Well, I've always been an artistic person, but like many artists out there, it's scary to take that plunge early on when rents are due and bills need to be paid, and it was something I kept on the back burner till I hit more of midlife, and I thought, what would I have done differently? And it was be an artist full-time. And that's when I took the plunge, and I really started training under some great artists, and once I got the basics down and had an understanding of basic painting and portraiture, I had the great intersection with this amazing Russian Impressionist artist who took me on as a newbie trainee, and Sherry Christensen, who's well known in the Southwest, has been my mentor for the last 15 years. So I'm very honored that she's my friend and mentor. Honestly, what drew me to the Russian Impressionism was the drama of the high contrast. It's really amping up that contrast between shadow and light. Mm-hmm. I used to describe it in easier terms this way, where you're driving down the road in the late evening and the sunlight has lit up something as simple as wheatgrass, that electrified wheatgrass against that darker sky. There's just a certain drama to it that I really love.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's what got me interested in that area. And then once I got into that, the other thing that pulls me personally as an artist is color energy. So it was the weaving together of those things. So there's also a very particular process in Russian Impressionism that I'll be happy to talk about too.
Okay,
but
great.
Yeah, that was sort of the origin, and I've been a full-time artist ever since.
What is that process?
Yes, I was going to say,
let's
discuss
dive
it
in.
Right now. We'll dive into it.
Basically, I start with a tinted gesso, and I particularly use a Venetian red or a terracotta, basically a warm red, underneath. And then I work on a line drawing. And then from there, this is the most difficult part of painting in this style. You absolutely must paint all of the shadow shapes first with none of the light. And the goal of that is to basically integrate all the shadow shapes and to add the high contrast drama at the very end.
So light over dark.
Yes. It's a very delayed gratification style of painting because hanging in there, only painting the shadow sides of things until the piece is completed in that form, takes some patience. It really does, but it pays off in the end. So the underpainting is fun because it helps unify the piece, and it also adds this color drama that I as the artist get to select where that color is peeping through. So then once you finish all of your shadow shapes, then you get the exciting part of frosting that cake. You get to go in there with the bam, 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 bam of the light. And you can lay it on thick, and it's just in an instant. It transforms every object that the light touches.
Oh, I can imagine.
We've got some great examples of that.
Oh, yeah. Just as you're describing this, I'm thinking about all your paintings, not just the ones behind us, but the other ones, we've had in the gallery that we have sold. And that just, I can see it now. It's like kind of all clicking and coming together for me.
Right.
The first time I saw your work, I picked up on the Impressionism right away. I mean, it has, the very loose gestural brush strokes, the plays of light, the use of color. Up until now, I was totally unfamiliar with Russian Impressionism and the difference between that and, say, like the French Impressionists or the American Impressionists,
Right.
which it's obviously a much different technique. And
That is, it's I think a good example of this is the morning stroll piece of two chickens.
Oh,
You can
yes.
see that for the most part they're in the shadow.
Mhm.
They are just coming out in the early morning, catching that early morning light in just dribs and drabs. So it was an exciting piece to paint, especially towards the end when I finally got to put the highlights on. But to me, it creates a certain drama. I'm very much drawn to that contrast and drama. So that's really a good example of what I like to do and what I like
So
to
are these
paint.
plein air paintings, and you're doing these live with the animals?
They're not live because I couldn't paint fast enough, frankly. I go out, and one of my favorite things to do is to take the photos.
Okay.
I was a little intimidated at first, but it became my favorite part. I go out in early morning or late evening, and I take, frankly, people have been so great. They let me onto their farms. I do my best to find the animals and go do the shoots. And literally every painting you see of mine, there is an animal adventure that I personally took behind each one.
oh, I can only imagine. Just, even getting them in the right pose for the photograph, and
Oh,
because
gosh.
animals are
Yeah, they're moving
so
all the time.
unpredictable. Yeah, they're constantly moving. You just
Yeah.
don't know what they're going to do. Are they going to react to you?
Exactly.
Are they going to ignore you?
So you take a lot of photos.
Yeah, I would think so.
Morning stroll, that was...
Do they oftentimes come up to you?
Oh yeah, or they chase me or whatever. It's literally an animal adventure every single time. But that's
great.
the joy of it. That was the unexpected part. I knew I wanted to create things, but having that opportunity to be out in nature and have those moments was sort of the unseen blessing of taking this art journey. And for example, the morning stroll piece, I was actually on Martha's Vineyard, and they have a farm institute there, and they were kind enough to let myself and another painter on there to just roam the grounds and take photos. And so that's where that
That's where
particular
that was
piece...
painted?
Well, it's where it was the photos from,
Mhm.
the origin of it. Like literally every one of my pieces has a story of my animal adventure at the time.
Which is so wonderful, because it just provides another layer to the painting itself.
Oh, and I love when people ask about it, or and honestly, it's just so much fun to do. I've got really great stories behind every single piece. I can tell you the 4 chicks here. I was on Little Lumbee Island, where my mother lived in Washington State. And we got to talking to a server at a restaurant, and I asked him, hey, do you know if there are any farm animals on this little 7-mile island? And he says, well, I have chickens, and they just had chicks. And I said, you really? I said, would you mind if I photograph them? Meanwhile, my 2 kids are looking mildly horrified that I've now asked the server if I can basically go to his house and photograph his chickens.
Well, had you ordered chicken off the menu?
No comment. You'll get me in trouble with my poultry friends. He had this great corral in open sunlight. I got inside, laid down on the ground with my camera, and took a few hundred photos of chicks running around in and out of the sunlight.
And I love this one because there's so much action to it. You're getting them from all these different angles. I love that. And you're still getting so much of the animal's personality through.
Well, it's interesting about this piece, the inspiration, because I did such a big photo shoot that day, and I had so many individual photos, and I was talking with one of my girlfriends, and we were just discussing, how all of our kids had such distinct personalities. There's the shy one, the musical one, the one that's very, very social. And that conversation was resonating in my head when I went back through the photographs, and I thought, well, that's it. I'm going to There is the shy one and the social one.
Sure.
And the more thoughtful one and the one that's just doing their own thing. And so to me it was fun to put these together to basically portray all of these different personality types. It's also such a brief window of time that you can photograph chicks because they turn into teenagers so rapidly. It's just really fun to catch them at that age.
That was actually kind of leads me to my next question. You were just saying that you're working on another piece from a photo that you had taken during that same time period.
Right.
So you'll revisit some of the older photographs you've taken?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You know, and some of them, you know, they just kind of have their own time and moment to where you just really feel inspired to do that particular piece. So it's been an interesting artistic journey on just I've liked too developing, and I love, honestly, Earl, my sheep over here, that is more of a
yes.
portrait piece. It was fun to kind of revisit my tighter portraiture earlier education and work on that.
Just has this, you know, he looks very regal, that in a
There
way
you
that
go.
you would not expect from a sheep. And it's funny, I was looking at him as I was coming up with the questions last week for the podcast, and one of the things that struck me about that piece is the difference between viewing some of your pieces, and especially Earl, up close as compared to further away. Because you really see a lot of the impressionistic elements in Earl when you're looking up close, but from further away, it looks realistic. The brushstrokes and brushwork don't look as gestural from afar as they do up close. And it was kind of reminiscent to me also of Rosa Bonheur, some of her animal studies. You know, just in the way that you've got these wonderful details in the face and the coat, and of course that dramatic contrast that you were talking about between the light and dark. And I just love Earl. He's one of my favorites.
Honestly, they've just been all such fun to paint. Yeah, it was fun to reuse those portraiture muscles a little bit more.
Sometimes when I look at your work, I think about Rembrandt, and I'm just curious if that's any kind of an influence on you.
Yes, you know, when I was studying portraiture, one of the exercises we would do, I did a class. It was torturous but brilliant. You basically had 2.5 hours to replicate a masterwork portrait.
Oh, wow.
And so I did
That's
a series
intense.
on Rembrandt where you were trying to get it to completion in the 2.5 hours. And so, yes, that was definitely a big part of my training right there. So interesting that you picked up on that, David.
Yeah, that's actually, and it's incredibly astute. It hadn't occurred to me before, but now I'm kind of like, why didn't I see this? I mean, the Rembrandt is known specifically for that wonderful contrast of the light and dark and the dramatic effect. And that comes across in all of his work, whether it be his portraits or some of his just biblical religious scenes.
Could you talk about the hair?
Oh, yes. Tell us
Yeah,
about the
this
hair.
piece was a little bit different one for me in that I just decided to really push the underpainting color envelope with this piece. I took it where normally in my more traditional pieces there's a Venetian red underpainting. This one, I went a little wild, not gonna lie. It was a little more experimental, pushing the vibrant turquoise colors. And I really, really enjoyed how that turned out. I will be doing more experimentation with brighter color because I am drawn to color energy. In fact, that's what, you know, in any art process, it's always an evolution. And as much as I loved the high contrast of these great painters of the past, I really wanted the color energy.
Oh, sure. I mean, I think just working with color to me would be very gratifying, and playing with it. And again, I can see what you're describing here. one of the things I find so interesting about this piece, if you just look at tiny details of it, the ground here, just areas of the flowers, there's pieces that are really almost abstract.
Yes.
And of course, again, if you're looking at it from far away, then it kind of tightens up and it becomes, more realistic. But
Right.
getting closer here.
Anytime you really zoom in, I mean, clearly, like the two chickens, they're wandering through some weeds and scrub grass there, but it is really just implied.
Yes.
And once you're up close, you realize how implied that is. And I would say the same in the hair piece. There were fall leaves around. There was a downed log that was nearby this particular hair.
Mm-hmm.
None of those are painted in precise ways. All very implied.
Which I love, because it really kind of puts your focus on the animal itself, and then you're kind of pulling backward and then taking everything
Right.
into account, through your
Was this
vision.
a Wisconsin?
That's Wisconsin, yes.
What about the portrait of the cow on the right?
Oh, yes, sunshine.
Sunshine was actually a Texas farm. I was down there assisting in a workshop, and we did a photography jaunt, and that's where that one was from.
Is that a dairy?
Yep.
I think the first thing that struck me when I saw this painting was the use of blue.
Yes.
I thought that was so unique.
Well, it's interesting the way color actually bounces around. We know that cow was mostly sort of a brown, red, and white,
Mm-hmm.
but that white is so reflective. Like what you see actually, things that are actually white never actually get painted white. Another example is Lucille, the goose over here. Again,
Oh,
that
sure.
was a white goose. There's very little white on that piece.
Yeah, again, it's that wonderful blue, and then
Right.
you've got kind of these golden tones.
And the sky. I do use a limited palette. I think it helps unify the piece. So I usually paint with just 7 colors.
Oh, okay.
So-
And I would never guess that, because it looks, to me, it seems like there's so
I know, it
much.
just seems like there's 30 colors.
Exactly. Yeah, I wouldn't think 7 colors.
Well,
to
all
me,
the
I'm like, oh,
nuances.
there's so many.
And variations,
Yeah.
So what are the 7 colors?
So we're talking cad yellow light, cad yellow deep, cad red light, alizarin crimson, a yellow ochre, phthalo blue, ultramarine blue, and then the black and white.
Okay. So those are the go-to.
Those are the go-tos.
Do you have
Everyone's
a preference in terms of brands of oil paint?
Yes. I'm a gambling girl. I love the fact that it's artist owned and that they are really creating their pigments with in the environment and the health of the artist. And I find their stuff really great to work with. And so yes, I paint almost exclusively with Gamblin paints. If they want to work out a deal with me, happy to. It's got some additional advertising.
Yes. We love you, Gamblin.
Right?
Well, kind of circling back to your beginnings as an artist, and one of the things we talked about earlier, what drew you specifically to animals as subject matter?
Well, I grew up in a little teeny tiny farming logging town, Enumclaw, Washington, on the high plateau, and honestly, those were my formative years. Later on, I lived a very urban life, New York City and Los Angeles, Miami, even living out in this area in more of suburbia. But honestly, that's where I'm happiest. Driving down a country road, stopping, jumping out of the car, photographing the animals.
Yeah. Country girl at heart.
Yes, my kids know if I'm around animals, I'm happy.
Okay, so there's kind of a nostalgia, I imagine, then, for
There
you.
is. I am 12 years old again
Oh,
when I'm out there with the animals.
that's
so
great.
And they have such personalities.
Yes,
You know?
absolutely. Well, as we can see too, from your lovely paintings, I mean, like, I've always said this about your work, the personality of the animal just always,
Yay.
shine,
Then
always
I've
shines
accomplished
through.
my goal.
Absolutely. I mean, I've seen in some of your work, I've seen more personality shine through these animals than I have in some portrait paintings that people do. So I think that's amazing.
I will take that as a high compliment. Thank you.
Oh,
Because
my pleasure.
yes, these feel like my friends. So yeah.
They look like your friends. They look like your friends and your family. There's obviously,
Right.
you obviously have a great love for them, and I think that comes across in the paintings themselves.
That's awesome.
Of the over 600 different artists whose works we have in the gallery, when people come into the gallery, you're definitely in the top
Oh,
few
yeah, no
artists
doubt.
that people love your work the most.
No
Thank
doubt.
you so much.
Yeah. We get feedback and all the time, and I know one of our interns here is just obsessed. I love Cathryn's paintings. He's always talking about
I better
them.
get busy. What am I doing? Well, I plan to be producing for a long time, so
Well, wonderful.
it's what I love to do. I have to say my original intersection with David is such a cute little story in
yes,
its own
how
right.
did the two of you meet, please?
I
I'd
had
love to
joined an
hear.
artistic co-op, just joined them, and they told me, "Oh gosh, we're going to do a pop-up at David Barnett's gallery,"
Mhm.
and I was lucky enough to jury 3 pieces into that show. It was an upcoming show. It was still a couple weeks away. I was downtown with my father-in-law and my girlfriend, and we were doing some fun things downtown, and I said, "Hey, in a few weeks I'm going to have some paintings at this gallery. What do you think we do a little reconnaissance mission and see what's this gallery like?" Because I hadn't been in before.
Go check it out.
And I said, "We got to keep it on the down low, though, people. They don't know me. They don't know my work. They don't know my work is going to be in this pop-up show. Like, we're just there looking around. Got it?" And they're like, "Mm-hmm, mm-hmm." So we get in here, and of course, I was blown away by the art. I was mesmerized. It turned into a very long stop when we came in.
Yeah, it's hard to make a quick stop.
Exactly,
to the
because this
gallery.
place is like an art wonderland. So there I was, and I'm staring at this painting, and I'm trying to understand. There's an iridescence. It piqued my interest as an artist. Like, what is that? What was used there that created this iridescence in this piece?
Mhm.
And I'm studying it, and a distinguished gentleman in a suit coat came over and said, "Can I help you? Can I answer any questions?" I had no idea that I was talking to David. I did not know that that was the owner of the gallery. And I said, "Well, I'm looking at this piece, and this iridescence just really caught my eye, and I'm really trying to understand what the artist used and what they did." And turns out it was one of David's paintings, his own painting. I didn't know that either at the time. And so, of all these paintings, I'm sitting here staring at his painting. So we got in this very involved artist discussion on technique and product and what's available and how do you use it and like all these different things. And a half hour goes by, and he finally says to me, "I can tell you're an artist. So where are your pieces? Where are your pieces hung?" And I took a moment. I said, "Well, they're going to be here." And he looked really confused for a moment.
They are.
I said, "I'm part of the pop-up show that's coming, that was contracted in. My pieces will be..." He was like, oh. And right about then, my girlfriend and my father-in-law, who'd done their best to be restrained, couldn't help themselves anymore. "She's a fantastic artist. You're going to love her stuff." And it looked like I had brought a cheer squad with me to the gallery. My greatest and deepest art exchanges happen when I can come here and hang out with David, and we can talk art of all kinds and, check out what's new, what's old. So it was just really a delightful mix for me, and what really felt like an excellent fit.
And for me too. Thank you.
Yay. Do you remember this
Yes,
meeting?
very clearly.
It's funny, as soon as you said iridescent, right away I'm thinking it had to have been one of David's paintings. Because I know you've used a lot of iridescent paints
Dr.
in your
Philip
works.
Martin, iridescent watercolors.
There you go. Yes.
Yep.
So I learned about that.
Which
that
are
day.
actually acrylics, because when they dry, there's a molecular change and it becomes permanent.
It's fascinating. I kept doing, sort of like this maneuver because you could see the light shift on it. So basically you walked up on me doing this.
Yeah, kind of going back and forth, like, is this lady okay? Okay, no,
Right?
she's just looking at the paint changing colors.
Right.
Oh, that's great.
So it's been a few years now.
It's been fantastic.
It's been fantastic.
Yeah.
For anyone who's interested in maybe dabbling in this style of art themselves, one thing to look for when you're doing the photography is that unlike, usually you're just trying to get this well-lit animal, it helps if the animal is backlit. So you're basically getting that light
okay.
caressing edges of the animal
Sure.
or edges of the object.
That makes
And
sense.
so that's usually what I'm looking for. And, you can sort of see here in sunshine, most of the cow in the dark, but that caressing of light just passing through the edges and the edges of the fur and the ears.
Yes, I love the way it kind of halos the top of her head and then the end of her tail there, that wonderful bit of white just really pops against the darker background.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's part of the key. There are times when they're like, oh, I took a bunch of animal photos for you, but they're all just bright sunlight where everything is basically in the same value or close to it.
Yeah, and that's
And
not
I'm
gonna
really
give
looking
you-
for that exchange in value.
You want the depth, you want the highlights. Sure.
Absolutely.
That makes sense. Well, our next gallery night is going to be October 18th, and that will be a show completely devoted to animals. So,
Yay.
of course, we will be highlighting a lot of your work,
Thank you.
which will be
Looking
great,
forward to it.
as well as other artists who have focused on animals, whether it be paintings, photography. I imagine we'll have a mix of mediums. So please feel free to come by and join us for gallery night in October. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It was
It's been my pleasure
to have you here and to get to talk about your wonderful animal portraits and obviously ones that aren't portraits.
It's a little
Just
bit of both.
Yes, you get a little bit of everything with Cathryn's work. And of course, for anyone interested in purchasing any of these paintings or any of the other pieces we have of yours in the gallery, they are available in person at the David Barnett Gallery, or you can purchase them through our website. All right, I guess this wraps up our 11th episode. Thanks everyone for listening and watching.
Thank you.
And we'll see you later.
We look forward to seeing you soon.
Bye.